Alright, this video is about changing the notoriously bad and obsolete Bendix 9 ABS over to a conventional system. This system was used on the early Cherokees. This one is a 89. So we got everything all swapped over and made it on our 2,000-mile road trip, and everything worked great. So I'm pretty confident in the system, so check it out and hopefully it'll help you out. Sorry about the noise. It's raining again and we're in middle building, so it's pretty noisy, but I'm going to go ahead and get started yanking the old Bendix ABS system off and pump over there somewhere. This thing has an exhaust leak at the cylinder head, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the intake and exhaust manifold off just to give me more room to work. I wouldn't pull it off if I didn't need to fix a leak, but I think it'll help things out, so we'll check back in. Here's what would normally be the shelf for your coolant reservoir, but in this case it's got the ABS pump mounted to the bottom of it, so we're going to get rid of that. And with the intake off here, you can see just how much stuff there is in this system. And so there's lines running across, and I'm going to start tearing all this stuff out. The Bendix ABS is unique in the way it stores pressure for the service brakes. It's got an accumulator, so you need to pump the brakes about 50 times with the battery disconnected key off to release that pressure before it's safe to take the system apart. All right, I went ahead and pulled the 4 bolts off on the inside of the dash and the bolt that goes through the pedal, and so that's all loose in there. I pulled the proportioning valve off, disconnected the lines here, and there's still something holding it on, and it looks like I had to pull the washer tank out to really get over here and see what was up, but it looks like this line right here is the one that goes to the passenger front, so that's holding it. I'm going to pull that out and see if I can get it out. All right, I did it the hard way, so you don't have to. I was kind of fighting this plug, trying to figure out how it unplugged. And once I rolled over on the side, when I got the lines disconnected, it does have a screw in the middle, so that was easy enough. And then the proportioning valve, really, I did not need to disconnect most of those lines. They were just part of the unit. This one here needs to come off. And then these two over here, which screw right here and right here. And all the rest of this stuff can stay on here. And this thing is actually unbolted. All right, here's all the junk we pulled off. It actually went pretty smoothly. I didn't show under the dash. Basically, I just pulled the 4 nuts off here. I had to use a swivel and a couple extensions for one of the top ones. It was a little hard to get to. And pulled the bolt out of here. It goes through the brake pedal arm. I did not mess with the old brake light switch here. We're going to replace that with a new different style part number I actually got on the Comanche Club that eliminates having to machine the end of this arm flat, which is kind of the hardest part of the swap. So when I get to that point, I'll show you that. Looks like we do have a remanufactured motor in here. It actually was working okay, but it's just an obsolete system, so I want to get rid of it. I will hold on to this stuff a little bit if anybody needs it. They're trying to keep theirs going without doing the swap, let me know. Not sure about shipping these actuators, but I would imagine the compressor and the master could be shipped. This is a new unit I got from Omix ADA. It's a new old stock 1996 dual diaphragm unit. New master, genuine Chrysler part. And I bought a line kit from Fine Lines. And I'm going to just try to replace all the front lines, and hopefully I can reuse the existing rear line. So we'll let you know how that goes. I'm hoping to have a bolt-on conversion without having to do a bunch of weird stuff. So the hole in the new 96 push rod was too small for the old bushing. I used a 9/16 drill bit, a step bit, and then slowly reamed it just a little bit to size without on the drill. I didn't use a die grinder because I wanted to make sure I didn't go oversized, so we went real slow. All right, everything's mocked up at this point. Only thing I have left to do is extend the rear brake line, and we'll get to that here in a minute. The passenger front new line I had a little bit of trouble with. I was trying to route it where the original one was, down below the seam here, and finally figured out that they've rerouted it up higher to make it easier to install. Also has a union here. It's a 2-piece line, also to make it easier. So it's not quite as clean of a routing as the original, but it'll get the job done and probably much easier to install. The top brake pedal is from the ABS equipped Bendix system, and the lower one's from a conventional system. You can see the hole for the pivot is 1 inch lower on the conventional one. I am probably just going to use this one for my parts Jeep here instead of drilling a hole. Finishing up removing the ABS, I have read in some of the forums that people thought that the ABS wheel cylinders were a different size and operated under a higher pressure system. So I swapped them out, plus they're old anyway. Mine were 7/8, both old and new, but they'd also been replaced at some point. They said made in Taiwan, so who knows. Changing the brake line, I'm putting a longer Wrangler one on. And normally I would leave this block bolted down while I took these brake lines off, but this one was fighting me and I was afraid it was going to strip out. So a lot of people already know, but if you throw a vice grip on your tubing wrench to keep it from spreading, a lot of times it'll get off a fitting that otherwise would strip out. So I did have to unbolt this block to get clearance to get the vice grip on there. And so I just threw a wrench on here to stabilize it. Like I said, normally I would have just left it bolted to the housing if it would have unscrewed nicely. But the rear brake hose was a little short even in stock form. So I've got a Jeep Wrangler replacement hose here. Here's the Dorman part number. It is made in China, as are their asbestos hoses I bought. So I don't know if one's better than the other. The stock hose was about 12 3/4 in between the fittings, and this one's about 16 1/2. And I've also got part numbers for longer hoses for the front. If you want stock replacement style, they're also Wrangler hoses. I'll pin it in the comments, the stock length and the Wrangler length, so you can see if they'll work for you. So the old rear brake hose, the block here had a thick washer as a spacer, and the new one's just made thicker to begin with, and so it fit fine just leaving that washer out. All right, here's the rear brake line. I had to extend a little bit, so it's got a union right here, and then it did need to be adapted because the hole in the proportion valve was a larger size, and that is the fitting that fit mine. I ended up buying a used proportioning valve on eBay. I saw new ones there, but they were unbranded and I was unsure of the quality. And the old one looked very similar, but I was afraid that it might be valved differently due to the ABS system. So I thought that was the safest bet. Okay, so I mentioned earlier I was using the Cadillac brake light switch. It replaces the stock style here. This is, I'm out in my parts rig because it doesn't have a dash in it. It's a little easier to video. But the problem I have is with cruise control, that hole is already taken up with this vacuum solenoid. So what I'm gonna do, there's another hole next to it. So I've got the brake pedal arm back out and I'm gonna weld a little plate on there so it'll contact both these switches at the same time. So just a heads up, if you don't have cruise control, the switch will probably fit right in here and work perfect. But if you want to retain your cruise control, then modifications are required. All right, I welded a little piece of plate steel on the pedal assembly to hopefully push down both of my switches at once. We'll see how it works out.
All right, it's pretty hard to see under the dash here, but both switches are going to fit in the factory mounts there. And they're going to contact that plate that I welded onto the pedal. And I just need to change the terminals on the end of the wires to suit the new switch, and I think we'll be good.
All right, I'm just finishing the last few steps of the ABS deletion on this. I threw some clamps on the new brake line that I added. There's a couple more that are buried under wiring now that you can't see. And the other minor detail was the washer reservoir interfered with the new deeper double diaphragm booster. And I tried just sliding it ahead a little bit, but it's so tight in here with the air filter and then the aftermarket radiator with fill neck that it just wouldn't fit. If you had a different air filter setup, like a cowl induction or whatever, I'm sure it'd probably be fine. So what I ended up doing is just heating up the reservoir a little bit with the heat gun and then pushing it into place, and it kind of formed itself over the booster, and then I threw the screws in. All right, the last thing I had to deal with was the brake light switch, and here's how it works the way I understand it is this white switch here, if you have automatic, you'll be equipped with it, and it's for the torque converter lockup. And it also has a vacuum dump valve for the cruise control. But it sounds like a lot of vehicles with automatic, or all of them, will have this even if they don't have cruise control. So if you don't have cruise control, you can simply put the NAPA switch in here and then hook these two to the two terminals marked TCC, and then the other two to the brake light switch one, and you'll be good to go. And then just put it in this hole. If you have cruise control though, you need to retain this, and that's the problem I ran into, where I actually had to weld the strap on the brake pedal to activate both switches. And the other issue, if you don't have cruise control, there will only be 2 terminals on your old switch, and if you do have cruise, it's got 4. But as you can see, they're really just hooked together. So I just combined the wires together in a new terminal and then just plugged them in a new switch. So I'm actually going to have 2 unused terminals on my new switch, since I'm retaining the old switch because of cruise control. Hopefully that makes sense. It's a little complicated.
I'm going to do my best to show you the 2 switches down here side by side. So you'll see the plate I welded onto the pedal, and then the stock TCC switch with the dump for the cruise control, and then the new brake light switch next to it. So here's the Jeep as it sits now. The brake system's working excellent. We made it on our 2,000-mile road trip, and went and visited our friends that gave it to us and surprised them. It's got a small, like, up-country style lift on it. We've got a video on that. We refinished the wheels. There's a video on that. And there's a video on our adventures. Make sure you check them out. Thanks for watching.